Welcome to another episode of the Libertarian Christian Podcast, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute and part of the Christians for Liberty Network. I am your host, Doug Stuart, and I have a very special guest, somebody that I have wanted to talk to about a particular topic that's been near and dear to my heart for about a year. Her name is Elizabeth Nolan Brown, and she is senior editor at Reason and author of Reason's biweekly Sex and Tech newsletter, which covers issues surrounding sex, technology, bodily autonomy, law, and online culture. She's also co-founder of the Libertarian feminist group Feminists for Liberty and is adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati. Her recent cover story, which you can see on YouTube if I'm holding this up, is Reason's July 2025 print magazine on the MAHA movement and RFK Jr. and the historical precedents over the past few decades with basically the American health movement. So today we're going to talk about MAHA, and she's going to help us answer the question, what happens when health movements clash with libertarian principles? Hey, Liz, thank you for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
This has been I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks here now that we've settled a date and we're able to kind of have this conversation. And I read your article, I listened to your conversation with Nick Gillespie on his show, and I think you and I have treaded similar ground as it goes to sort of the health movement and stuff. I actually didn't know there was such a thing as the MAHA movement until I was at Rescue the Republic in, I think it was September of 24. And that wasn't really a MAHA thing until I got there and realized that they were a big sponsor. That was Brett Weinstein's sort of brainchild to get people together in DC. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I remember thinking, wow, there's a lot of RFK people here. Well, okay, well that makes sense because now he's with the Trump campaign and so forth. But I didn't realize there was a movement. I knew there were. I mean, obviously, we always know there's the Jillian Michaels out there. There's big names and Peter Attia, people helping you, think through your body, think about what you're eating, think about how to take care of yourself. But I didn't know it was this movement that wanted some sort of political grasp. So anyway, I didn't even know that existed up until later last year. And it sort of had, I don't know, I felt like I had a connection to it. And so anyway, that just sort of me on this whole idea of well, how do I understand what this movement is? How do I understand there's just so much health information out there. My guess is that you knew about a MAHA movement before I did. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit of your story and how you came across it and became interested in it.
I mean, I actually may have been around the same time as you that I started realizing that there was people calling it the MAHA movement. Probably a while back, I've been paying attention to why are all of the right-wingers suddenly sounding like, left-wing hippies from the 70s or my friends in Brooklyn from 2009? What is going on? And then so when I started trying to explicitly be what is, trying to answer the question of what is happening for that, I noticed, I started noticing that a lot of the stuff was falling under the hashtag or the rubric of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. But I think it really did just sort of start to coalesce, not too long ago. Once RFK was sort of on board with Team Trump and he sort of used that, that's when a lot of these trends that were sort of already percolating in different ways, actually started giving themselves the label MAHA.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have any personal interest in making yourself healthy again, prior to MAHA, or were you influenced by the political movement?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, so I was a health and nutrition writer for women's health blogs, back in the late aughts and early 2010s, and got a certificate in nutrition and was briefly writing a book about eating for brain health. I kind of go way back on this, and I'm sort of a nutrition nerd. I still like to read nutrition studies, and I'm very particular about kind of what food is in my house and things like that. So I definitely, this was already an interest of mine, which is I think why I started to, notice this different sort of political tenor to the people that were talking about this stuff.
What got you interested in that in earlier life? What prompted that for you to be interested in nutrition and body health?
So I grew up eating a pretty standard diet.
Conveniently labeled SAD, sad.
Yes, the standard American diet. Yes.
Yeah.
I've always been pretty thin just naturally, but I wasn't fit, and I got headaches, and I I had issues with my mood and just various things that I never really thought of as being related to diet because, you grow up thinking like these are all separate silos, like you eat right so that you don't get fat or so that your teeth don't rot. And that was kind of the only things I thought that food affected,
Yeah.
And then, this was sort of in my 20s, in my, I guess, mid 20s, I was working for the AARP actually. And I read this book, called, I forget what the book was called, but I read a book that was about the food-mood connection maybe that was starting to talk about how diet could affect your mental health. And it was really like kind of a revelation for me that was even possible. And then I started dating someone who lived in Brooklyn and was very into like the food movement scene there, which people kind of called it at the time, like Michael Pollan and like slow food, slow cooking. So I just started gradually getting more and interested in trying to sort of change the way I ate. Like I went on a raw food diet for like 2 months or something just to try and reset my body, which, like I don't actually believe the raw food diet is good, but it was good in that it did help me reset my cravings for things and sort of start. So I just sort of totally overhauled the way I ate and I lost like 20 pounds. And I mean, I was, like I said, I was never heavy, but I don't know, maybe just had an extra 20 pounds because I lost it and I've never gained it back. I felt I haven't had headaches since then. I just felt like a lot of things start improving that I hadn't realized were maybe tied to my diet. And, this was almost 20 years ago now. So, it's been, that was the origin.
Yeah. Okay. Do you look back on it now and think, how did we not make that connection that what we put into our body is going to, in some ways, chemically alter how we behave and how we react to things?
Totally. I mean, it seems nuts to me, but also I still think there's so many people who don't make that connection, right? I mean, I still think that like a lot of people around me still kind of think that that's a crazy idea. I'd say more people than not, like, don't really realize that. And, like, I also think it was, I'm talking about, in the 90s, especially, like when I was, when I was a child and then I was in high school, I graduated high school in 2000. So like, that was the whole era of like, just eat low fat, just eat like Snackwell's cookies and whatever, and you'll be healthy. And so it was just, there was this totally different vibe when it came to nutrition and this idea that like, if you just sort of ate these very processed, but like not containing the magic bad ingredients things, then you would be okay.
Yeah, that reminds me of that Seinfeld bit where he's kind of like, he was talking about everybody's obsessed with fat. That fat, it's going to be in me. And that was kind of how we thought of it. Like, if I eat this, it will become part of me, which I guess in some sense is true. But that's, if only we knew, right? I had a next question. I kind of lost my train there. Do you, so in your personal journey, you found you became healthier through personal choice and specific dieting and things like that. Did you try any fad diets? Like try the ones that like, and I think back around the time you're describing I guess it was Atkins was kind of the pre-keto, because they seem so similar to me when I think about it. But did you try any fad diets?
I mean, aside from I tried the raw food diet, as I said. So that was definitely
that was the one.
A fad diet at the time. Like there was a raw food. There were a couple of raw
I could
food
never do
restaurants
that.
around. Yeah, I mean, So that was definitely that. I think then, luckily I was sort of very influenced by, like I said, my boyfriend at the time, and like by just the general vibe. Again, like this is the era of Michael Pollan and Alice Waters really, breaking into the mainstream. So the whole vibe was like, don't diet, just eat whole foods, eat healthy. So I think I was very much, luckily, sort of saved from that. And I eat like low carb, but not in any sort of strict way. Like I don't follow like the you need to only have this many grams of carbs. I don't count carbs. It's still very much just in a way that is that is intuitive and natural more so than counting any sort of macros or anything like that.
Do you tend to avoid any particular foods that are just absolutely never?
Oh, I mean, I never would have like regular soda, or I never have juice. I never have, but I don't know. I mean, most of the sort of typical junk foods are almost never. But I also try to not, I mean, like I have 2 small children and, I don't want them to grow up feeling like, because I knew this girl growing up, right? And she like her mom like wouldn't let her have anything, right? And she'd come over to my house, and of course we had like Gushers and Pop-Tarts and all that stuff. But she just like eats so much of it. Whereas at least like, my mom let us have it, but we also had limits on it, and we were kind of at least had a healthy relationship to junk food, if that makes any sense, as much as you can. And I felt like she really didn't, because she was never allowed to have it. So, I'm trying now with my kids to walk this fine line where it's like, I don't want them to get used to this stuff, but I also don't want them to have it be so deprived from it that like when they are required to make their own food choices that they like go crazy,
Yeah. No, and I get that. There's a story when I was growing up, there was a friend of my brother's whose parents were, I guess the term now is crunchy. Back then we called them granola families, and her son turned 1. And that was literally his first encounter with sugar, was a cupcake for his birthday. And he was, again, 1 year old. And you can imagine the ecstasy on this kid's face when he had the cupcake.
I made for my son's first birthday, like a cake that was like almond flour and like sweetened by berries. So not even one. I was like, no, we're not doing all this sugar.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's good. I wish I were ahead. I mean, your kids are much younger than mine. Mine are in their teens. I can explain how they treat me when I look at labels here in a minute. But actually the mother actually kind of realized, oh, okay, maybe we should do kind of what you're describing. It's like, have a healthy relationship with junk food, in the sense of like, I often tell my wife, she has always been a sort of looks askance at processed foods and things that we tend to now look at as like, okay, we're just not going to eat those. And I've always been like, yeah, whatever, look at, we have to feed all these people, capitalism has gone great. Commercialization of food is not a bad thing. I've since changed my views on that. So I would look at those things and think, oh, okay, I will just have them in moderation and so forth. And now I don't even crave them. I mean, it's just to that point. But my kids, they're just, they're still adjusting to this. And so they just, every time I flip over a label, they're just like, Dad, what are you doing? So I'm looking for seed oils. What do you think I'm doing?
I mean, I'm a big label person too, because you can't really, I don't know. And it's, oh my gosh, it's just funny too, the things that are on labels, right? Like my mom came home the other day and she was like looking for applesauce that doesn't have added sugars, right? Like unsweetened.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I couldn't find it, but I found this one that says no fat-free. And I was like, of course it's fat-free. It's applesauce. Like, but it's just,
that's like the potatoes that says made from vegetables.
Right. Like, it's
or vegetable-based.
But, like they try so hard to trick people with these labels that like are nonsensical, but like sound healthy if you're not really quite sure what you're looking for. So I understand why people are, have such a hard time.
Were you influenced at all by Michael Pollan, or if not, who influenced you during all those years and even up till now?
I mean, I think mostly just people around me. It was more like, like I said, like I ended up moving from DC to Brooklyn around in like 2009, and I was just very much like immersed in this food scene there. So it was more just like not so much from reading at the time as from
your experience with others. Yeah. That were in it. Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Did it affect your budget at all?
Again, no, because it's really easy to get really fresh produce and things like that. Well, I mean, at the time, like it was really easy in Brooklyn. Now I think it's pretty easy, like all over the place. It's amazing how
many places. Yeah.
It definitely affects my budget now, though, because I do shortcuts, right? Like I'm trying to eat healthy, but also, like I said, like I'm working full time. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Like trying to cook all the time for them. Like, like we buy like, often I buy those like, and I know some people are going to say this is horrible, but like, those bags of broccoli that are like, it's fresh broccoli, but you can just stick it in the microwave and it steams itself, instead of the fresh broccoli. Like I'll buy stuff like that is more expensive because it's convenient and helps me cook a meal in like, 10 minutes as opposed to a half hour or something. And so, or without having to chop everything up myself. Like, I think that's the problem. Like, you can be healthy for cheap, or you can be healthy in a really quick way. But doing all three of those is kind of
it can be kind of tough. I had somebody ask me. It was probably about I think this was probably pre-COVID, and she was kind of like, we were talking about finding ways to sort of change our diet for our families. And she's like, well, what started motivating you or whatever? Like, what made that possible? And I said, honestly, we could start to afford it. Because we have two very close grocery stores that are like those discount stores, and it's all prepackaged food. I mean, that's the thing that has long shelf life, and there's a purpose for that. I don't want to like demonize all processed foods for some people, but I said we could start to afford to shop elsewhere and find the fresher versions of the things that we were already sort of like cooking on a regular basis, and that I think makes a big impact. I was going to ask you this later, but how much of this issue do you think is somewhat elitist, in the sense of like, oh, well, it's easier for you and me to sit here and say, we'll go ahead and buy, an $8 bag of chips because, it doesn't have seed oils in it because it's just more expensive, because we can afford it or whatever. Not everybody can do that. And, there's a limit to how much grass-fed beef tallow everybody can cook in because the prices and all that. But I don't know. What do you think?
I definitely think that, like, yes, on some level or in some ways that, healthy eating, MAHA, whatever, is talked about, it is elitist. Because, like you said, there are the people that are like, you have to do, that are very sort of purist about it. You have to do all of these things if you are going to be healthy. And if you don't, you're terrible. And, you're poisoning your children and stuff. But I think that, there's definitely ways you can talk about it where it's not. I mean, just the basic, because the basic principles of trying to eat more fruits and vegetables and trying to eat, whole foods and, trying to eat, not as many processed carbs and all of that stuff. Like, all of these things could go a long way for people without having to really worry. Like, cut out the soda and like all of this processed cereal and stuff. And then like, if your meat is grass fed or not, like, again, that's, for optimal health, like the most perfect health, like, yeah, that might make a difference. But also in terms of just like compared to the way so many people eat, I think there's so many steps we can take that aren't elitist, that don't require a ton of money.
Yeah, right. It's okay to get the luxury Toyota and not the Lexus.
Right. Right.
Like, you can still get a nice car that does what you need. You just don't need everything. No, I can definitely appreciate that. We've kind of talked a little bit about the MAHA movement. We've written this art here, and just like, our take on it, our experiences with it. You wrote an article about it a little bit. What's your best succinct way of describing what is the MAHA movement?
Well,
easy question, right?
Yeah, no, because I don't think there is, right? Because I don't think the MAHA movement knows what it is. I mean, I guess sort of, at its base, it's sort of a do-it-yourself health aesthetic. Like, people should take their health into their own hands, whether that's, their the quality of the air in their homes, down to the things that they put in their bodies, down to, the medicine they're using, all of that. It's basically like, educating people to be more health conscious and figuring out ways to do that. And so, I mean, the MAHA movement is very big on people like do-it-yourself health companies, like, companies that let you, like, Levels is, Callie Means,
Casey Means,
yeah. The thing where you can get your own glucose monitor at home, and like things where you can order your own lab tests and test your own levels and stuff like that. So I think that's, part of it. And it definitely is also tied to a skepticism about maybe traditional health bodies in some ways. But when you see what people are describing as MAHA, I mean, it's so all over the place. It's just, it's this huge collection, because I mean, you've got different groups that are pushing it, right? You've got, just people who are just like moms who are kind of apolitical, but who have sort of like latched on like, oh, like, these are the people who care about the stuff that I care about, like crunchy moms. So I'm going to use this label. You've got people who are specifically political, who are literally within the Trump administration, who are, acolytes of RFK, whatever, who are using it for very political reasons. You've got a lot of grifters, who are sort of latching on in order to like sell their whatever supplements they're hawking, or their personal dietary advice, whatever. So I think it's, it's really hard to say what exactly it is. But I think you can say kind of what ties it together. And like I said, this do-it-yourself ethos, this sort of slight skepticism of like old health advice or, establishment health authorities, things like that.
Yeah. Hey everyone, it's Doug from LCI. As you may know, the team at Podsworth Media has worked with us for a long time, producing our content for most of the Christians for Liberty network. A big part of that over the past couple of years has been using the Podsworth app to make our audio sound clean, level, and professional, even when the raw recordings were super sketchy, like this one you're listening to right now. Believe it or not, this recording was that bad before I ran it through the Podsworth app. And you can hear the full before and after demo yourself at podsworth.com. The app recently got a huge update, and it's now better than ever. So good, in fact, that it can take almost any atrocious voice recording and make it sound great. Here's how it works. It removes background noise, cuts down on plosives, fixes clipping when your gain is too high, removes clicks and pops, reduces reverb, improves tone, and levels out the dialogue so that you don't get any crazy volume jumps. Everybody hates that in a podcast. Using it is super simple. You just go to podsworth.com and click Get Started, drag and drop the audio files, open them right up from your phone's browser, customize your settings however you want, but honestly, the default works great for most settings, and here's a really cool thing. If you enter code LCI50, you'll get 50% off your first order. No account needed, just your email and payment. You'll get a download link in your inbox with cleaned up files. It's perfect for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, audiobooks, you name it. If your recording sounds rough, the Podsworth app can make it not only sound listenable, but professional. And remember, when you use code LCI50, you get half off your first order, and you'll also be supporting the work here at LCI. I remember listening to, so I've read Casey Means' book, I read Peter Attia, I've read Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying's book, which isn't really MAHA per se, but they're very much in the MAHA movement. And I remember listening to an episode of, I don't know what it was. It might have been an episode of Honestly or something where Jillian Michaels and Callie Means, who wrote the book with Casey Means, were talking about this stuff, and they were getting Q&A or whatever. And I just remember thinking, wow, I've sort of adopted a lot of the principles that I've read about in their books or whatever, but there's so much more. It's like, you mean I got to get a whole house water filter now too? It's just there's a little bit of you can't be purist enough kind of vibe to it.
And that's what and again, that's fine to talk about, right? Because if you want to go those levels, fine. But I hate when people act oh, if you're not doing this, you're not, you don't care about your health, you don't care about your kids' health. Because again,
borderline cult person,
and
borderline cult behavior there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of this stuff, I think one of the things that does, I'm probably more crunchy than a lot of people at Reason. But one thing where I kind of fall back maybe on the thing is Reason's longtime science correspondent Ron Bailey is always writing about dose dependency. And so much of this stuff, it's you'll show a study where yes, this thing may be carcinogenic. This thing may have negative properties. If you look at the study where they shot rats up with 300 times the amount that you're exposed to in your house. And then people health influencers will look at this and be look, this thing happened in rats. And so this is probably bad for us. Get it all out of your home. And it's just you need to consider the dose. Again, it's not saying that these things aren't, maybe toxic to us, but it's not necessarily saying that they are too. And I think there's a tendency within the MAHA movement to sort of look at anything that might potentially cause any harm at all and sort of act like it's a sure thing that we need to address.
Right. Like walking by somebody who's smoking is going to harm you more than that, small bag of whatever you just said is bad for you.
Right.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure.
Which is funny though, because it used to be such a thing on the left, this is, that used to be something I would associate with sort of the crunchy left.
So let's pivot to that a moment, and then we can talk about possible libertarian appeals. Why is it that the crunchy moms were usually left-leaning in the 90s, and now they're quiet or they're not so much? Or is it a different group, do you think? Or is it it's just coding a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is there's always been a certain amount of crunchy sort of the crunchy right. There always were sort of a conservative traditionalists that were homeschooling and baking their own bread. There were sort of the crunchy cons Rod Dreher wrote about, there always has been this strain within.
Yeah, that was a new term. That was a new term for me when reading your article or your conversation. I didn't know that existed. I mean, I knew people who were healthy could also be conservative. Obviously, it's not exclusive, but that was new for me.
Yeah, I mean, and he wrote about that starting in 2002 or 2003 is when he started talking about that. So there's always been this strain. And Jesse Walker, my colleague, pointed out the John Birch Society or Birchers were very into sort of healthy because there's no reason why this stuff should be left coded. In fact, sort of home cooking and caring about naturalness, actually
it's very traditional.
Yeah. But I think it's just sort of, for various reasons, a lot of this became coded as left. I mean, and if you think of what I think is most incredible is just by the 2000s, right? All I remember from that period with Republicans is them being because the left was into sort of healthy eating and was sort of associated with, green living and all this stuff, it was just mocked endlessly by the right. And they were we're going to do the opposite. We're going to eat triple bacon cheeseburgers and fries and these big gulp sodas, and you can't take them away from us. And in part, it's because you did have a lot of sort of like nanny state stuff happening on the left, like, soda taxes, or we're going to ban and all this stuff. So I think it was sort of, some of it was sort of a reaction to actually bad policies that we didn't want. But some of it was just sort of like anything that the left is, for, I'm against. And it was just kind of a
the reactionary thing. Do you think that's a part of what's going on with the MAHA right?
Right now?
That they're joining up with this sort of force because it's just against what the left is for. The left is for, we didn't talk about this yet, but you mentioned this about COVID in your conversation with Nick, that COVID was a big deal where there's a lot of distrust sown, and so a lot of the right people were like, we're not going to trust the government anymore. And the left people were like, no, Big Pharma is great. We worship Big Pharma.
Yeah, no, I think COVID, like I said, I read about my article, like COVID turbocharged everything. I think this was already starting to happen for various reasons. Like one, because the left sort of, a lot of the left sort of was clinging to this idea about low fat stuff and vegetarian diets because the left is very much into vegetarianism still and veganism more. So like even as advice sort of was changing about, meat and saturated fat and whole fats and stuff like that, the left was sort of not getting on board. So that kind of left this room for the right. The left also sort of started abandoning, I'd say like in like the 2010s, like started sort of abandoning this sort of nonpartisan or bipartisan, like sort of a slow foods, whole foods movement sort of a vibe because of concerns about elitism, concerns that it was, there was a lot of cultural appropriation involved, concerns that it was sexist, concerns that it was body shaming because you had to be healthy at any size, and talking about, people trying to eat better so that they might lose weight and not be obese was not, embracing like body positivity. So there are all these reasons why like that ground was sort of just like seeded by the left. And I think even before COVID, the right was sort of like, okay, like maybe actually, and also then, with Obamacare, the left got very much into like, actually like we're against sort of a do-it-yourself health stuff. Like we're for pharmaceutical companies. We're for making sure that everything goes through like the government, insurance, and pharmaceutical companies working together. And that's how we promote health. Like that one way, this sort of institutionalized way. Yeah. And so there was this sort of like void for anybody who did care. And so I think you had a little bit of like the right stepping into that void. And you also had a little bit of the people who were not necessarily political being like, well, the left doesn't really seem to care about these interests of mine anymore. And so when COVID happened the left sort of got even more, or Democrats or whatever got even sort of more tied to big health, with pharmaceutical companies and insurance and all that. And also sort of, there was this feeling that they were, shutting down gyms and not letting people exercise and do all this stuff. And so like, I talked to like a yoga teacher who was like, oh my gosh, like so many of my friends who were, body, like owned gyms or taught yoga or anything were in the business of bodies sort of were like, kind of associated with right-wingers during the pandemic because they were the only ones who were like, hey, maybe you should let these people like, teach and do exercise still. And then people started calling them right-wingers, and a lot of them were like, okay, well, I guess fine. Like, I guess I'm part of the right now. So I think there was, and then, at the same time, you have some moms who were maybe skeptical of vaccines a little bit to begin with, or various things who sort of, again, wouldn't have considered themselves right, but during COVID were then called right-wingers and sort of started them being like, okay, well, I'll start paying attention to these right-wingers, and then sort of have all kind of been lumped into the right now just by virtue of the things that they're interested in.
Belonging to a tribe is amazingly powerful.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, maybe you don't buy into the critical race theory explanation that John McWhorter has, which is it sort of functions like a religion in a lot of ways. But there, in my mind, I picture that phenomenon in the 2010s happening where the identity politics and tribalism of, we could just call it woke culture at this point, function much as a religion, and in a way overpowered any sort of like tribal / cult like behavior of what would later become the MAHA movement. And so you had to sort of see the yielding of, or the ceding of ground to, oh, well, wait, I can't cook that because it's cultural appropriation, or I can't cook that because I'm white and I have to feel guilty about everything I do. And I have to just watch everything I do. And those things seemed more obvious to prove. Like you can't disprove whether or not you have white privilege as a person, because as soon as you try to, you're like, well, there's your white privilege, there's your, and so forth. And so there's still that seemed stronger. I'm postulating here. That seems stronger than, well, it's okay to just, I have to choose to eat healthier foods instead of just eating whatever, Kellogg's puts in front of you and sells on the shelf. I don't know if that holds any water in your mind, but I don't know. You want to respond to that?
I mean, yeah, I definitely think that that was part of it. I think it was like I said, like there's a lot of different factors, but I think, yeah, like you couldn't have people talking about just like enjoying different cuisines without like, without being attacked as doing the cultural appropriation thing for a while. It sort of got ridiculous, and it felt like, it just felt like food on the left became really, really complicated in a different, like in a way that it was just like, you couldn't just, it was very different than the Michael Pollan era. I'll keep mentioning him, but it was very different from the era of just like, like eat simple whole foods, like go to the farmer's market, like cook, enjoy all these different things from all these different cuisines as long as they're, home cooking. And then suddenly it was just like, it was fraught with all these different, like sort of things you had to consider if you were on the left.
Problematic is the word I think they use. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that sort of turned a lot of people off of,
Well, ironically, though, you'd think it like for telling people to avoid those kinds of things and cooking natural foods that were from, other cultures. I mean, I was about to say allegedly other cultures, but that's not true. It's from other cultures is effectively pushing you into a, I mean, in their minds, it would be this sort of like white colonialist commercialized food diet. And it's like, well, wait, you're just pushing everybody in the literal opposite direction. And also you're not healthy. It's like, that's very counterproductive.
I mean, or also just this idea that, I don't know. I mean, I'm really glad that the whole cultural appropriation thing has started to die down, because obviously there are some like really egregious ways where you can do cultural appropriation that I think you shouldn't do. But like, it kind of became this idea that like, like you couldn't be a chef opening a restaurant that was like fusion because, or like you needed to, which was like, you needed to stick to your culture, which is just offensive to everyone, like it's obviously offensive no matter what your race, no matter what your ethnicity, because it's just like, what, you can only cook these things. And then when you try to like actually drill back, like, well, who was the first person? What was the first culture to cook this food? It also is usually way more complicated than people would pretend. Like, it's like, actually this was, all this blending for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's not, no culture owns a particular ingredient, like.
Yeah. Is it bad for me to think that Americans have improved a lot of other cultures' food?
I mean, I don't know.
I've been to big cities like New York and Chicago and other places. It's like, I've never, this tastes really good. And I some people are like, oh yeah, well, that's not how they do it in Italy, or that's not how they do it in Japan. It's way simpler. And I'm just like, you mean with less taste? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's the beauty. Like that's why cultural appropriation can be beautiful. Like that's how we've gotten so many good foods, is through centuries of people mixing their cultures together to make better products when you combine, different methods of cooking, different ingredients, all sorts of things. So
do you think it's settling on the left at all? Like, do you think the left is also settling down on that, or is it just we're not noticing it anymore because it's not drawing attention?
Because I also think that this has always been a minority of people, a very small minority of people on the left, right? Like, I think that the vast majority of people who vote Democrat or who consider themselves more, more progressive or liberal, whatever, like, we're not these people who were just sort of like militant about anti-cultural appropriation, or who were going around, accusing everyone of privilege all the time.
Yeah.
We're just doing all like, but it's just like, because of the media landscape and because of the social media landscape of a particular, like maybe, 10-year-ish stretch, like it just became really easy for those people to dominate the conversations and sort of set the priorities for, Democratic politicians, or what was going to be talked about in leftist leaning, papers and stuff. Like, it just, those people had an outsized voice, I think, for a long time. And I think that is dying down, which is good. Yeah.
Okay. No, I can see that. And, I would, of course, agree with that. So I want to talk about the kind of a big question here, which is like, okay, we have two libertarians here talking about this. We're talking about it relatively positively. But there's a little problem in the whole MAHA thing, which is the Make America Healthy Again, as opposed to just simply the movement being Make Yourself Healthy Again or something like that. There's a little bit of a libertarian appeal to me, and you can tell me how you feel about this, where there's this like appeal for MAHA. There's an appeal to personal responsibility. There's this idea of freedom of choice. We shouldn't be forced to eat something we don't know what's in it, or we don't, we need to, have transparency of information. And then there's a little bit more recent skeptical of government guidelines, especially since COVID. So how much does your libertarian impulse and instincts affect your attraction to this kind of movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's definitely a part of it. I mean, I like that it is. I like that it's all about personal responsibility. I like that there is this ethos of like, don't wait for the experts to, order you these particular tests, like order them yourself online. I like that it's encouraging all these startups that are like I wore blood glucose. Like I had gestational diabetes. Well, they thought I did. It turns out I just have some like weird glucose tolerance issues. So like I often wear a glucose monitor. So I could get a like handle on it. And, like I had to sort of go through this company where it was like, I went through Signos, which is like they wrote you a prescription because you could still only get them with a prescription until last summer. But, like I love all these companies that are like enabling people to sort of take, responsibility for their health at home. So
it's also becoming less expensive too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now that you don't have to have a prescription for it, it's much like the glucose monitors in particular. Like it's obviously less expensive. So like, yeah, just the deregulatory push that some of it is all about. Like, I think in general, a lot of what is considered MAHA is great and is great from a libertarian standpoint. And I think the danger is that though we also have this kind of trying to like, people are trying to be like, oh, but we can easily couple that with like Robert F. Kennedy and with the Trump administration pushing these things. And like, to the extent that it's like, let's push for like deregulation or whatever, okay. But like, it's a lot turned into like, actually, let's have them do, now that they're in power, like, let's have them do all the things that we think everyone should do and like mandate these things. And like, that's where I think the danger is happening, is that like this movement that started off very much about do it yourself and, is kind of then like getting a little bit like, okay, but now we've got our people in power. Why don't we use that power to force certain things on everybody?
How do you feel about some of that? Do you feel like that's wrong, or do you feel like we're undoing harms done?
I feel like
if they, like, for example, I'll give you an example. If they literally inverted the food pyramid, said, hey, here's our new food pyramid, I would shrug and say, okay, that's a whole lot better. No big deal.
Yes. I mean, yes and no. I would just rather them get rid of the food pyramid, right? Like, I think, why put energy into this thing that like shouldn't probably exist and is always going to be captured by interest? Because even if they do it, like I still don't actually believe that the Trump administration would do it perfect without being captured by some interest. And then I also don't believe that it would stay that way through the next administration. Just why not do away with it? I think that there's a lot of things that it's like, even the food dye stuff on the one level, it's like, I mean, who could be against getting rid of food dyes? And if they're just doing it by like persuasion of private companies, I think that's great. But like the mandates, again, I don't think it's great because, I mean, one, I don't think that's the proper role of the government. But two, we don't know. And like part of the reason we have so many bad things on our diet now is because the government ordered or pressured companies to stop using certain ingredients. So then their replacements turned out to be worse. And it's like, I don't think some of the dyes that they're going to use.
You're talking about like the trans fats and the seed oils?
Yeah. And stuff like, and then like all the pressure to stop using lard and stop using tallow. So then everyone started, using seed oils. And so it's just like, we can't say for sure that our things that we think now are going to be healthy actually are. Like nutrition is still unsettled. So I just don't want these things to create new orthodoxies like that are enforced by the federal government that then might take decades to undo if we find out that the science is actually wrong,
So let me give you somebody's asked me, how are these regulations, and particularly things like red dye 40 is kind of the talking point or the litmus test for like, this is something that has been known in other countries or determined in other countries by, I guess, whatever health apparatus, health bureaucracies, that this is not good for human consumption. And it's outlawed, and it becomes this sort of like, well, maybe it's some type of poison. Maybe it's something that is doing harm. And so my sort of minarchist libertarian defense of that could be, this is what I came up with, and you can tell me what you think, is that it is sort of the equivalent of telling industrial manufacturers that they can't pollute the waters, because that is affecting other people, or similar to cigarette companies where they hide the actual deleterious effects of smoking. And they, at first they made it sound like it was healthy, and then they just kind of were like, yeah, okay, do whatever you want to do. But we're not going to tell you it's healthy. And so they kind of hide the health benefits. So in some sense, there's this sort of like limited government defense of, we're going to make sure that Kellogg's isn't putting poison in your food and telling you that it's okay to eat. Like they can't lie to you. They can't tell you that something is going in, that you're consuming something healthy when it actually isn't. That's the best I could come up with in terms of like, well, okay, maybe those kinds of regulations are good, because we often, the whole pollution argument, basically.
I think the question is how much science actually is there about this stuff. And again, because I think some of the fear about some of these dyes is a little bit based on stuff where it's like, again, like if you were eating it in these huge quantities, okay, but like there's not necessarily evidence showing that at these smaller things. But I mean, I'm not going to get super worked up about the food dye bans. I'm not going to again, my impulse would be like,
the problem in West Virginia isn't food dye.
Yeah. I'm just like, you know what? Yeah. Of all the things, I think it's a little bit weird too, though, something how MAHA victories are being declared. Like, aha, we got Fruit Loops to change their things. And I know baby steps, sure. But also it's we're using different, different fats to cook French fries, and we're using different dyes in the worst sugary cereals. It seems.
Do you think the vibe shift might be worth it though? Do you think the vibe shift might be worth it? Okay, fine, we've made a few mistakes. We've banned things we didn't have to ban because every libertarian believes that we should have as much red dye 40 as we want in our bodies. Right? That is the position we ought to take. It should be illegal. It should be legal for us to have it if we want it. But at the same time, it's okay, so we made bad choices in a regulatory way, but let's say in the next 5 to 10 years, you have Americans thinking a lot more holistically, and I don't mean food holistically, but just holistically about the whole food industry, right? Oh, it's an industry. Oh, there's commercial interest. Oh, I can have choices. That I mean, I know somebody who's not very happy that RFK Jr. is HHS, head of HHS. But the person, because of her opinion about him on vaccines and some of what my friend calls kooky theories about it, that's kind of an irrelevant point for the moment. But they were like, but if we can change the direction that Americans are thinking about with activity and health and what we're eating, that's probably going to be an overall win. I don't know. I feel like the vibe shift might be worth it, but maybe I'm just getting all caught up in things that I like.
No, I think the vibe shift is great. I just think we don't necessarily need the mandates or the new regulations or whatever in order for the vibe shift to happen, right?
Sure.
Because the vibe shift's already happening on the right, which I just think is huge. It's hard for me to overstate, I think, how different it feels that the right is talking about food than it did 15 years ago. And if it's just we've made it okay for conservatives and men to care about nutrition and not be oh, that's gay. Oh, that's a sissy thing. Oh, that's only for women, right. Or liberals. That in and of itself is huge. So I think, I think the vibe shift is important. I just don't know that it goes hand in hand with some of the more, government stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I want to switch to a lightning round and just ask you a few questions. But before we get to that, I would just want to say, do you have friends or family members who ask you why in the world that's in your kitchen or in your pantry?
My whole family thinks I'm the weirdest eater. They're all
really.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I must be lucky. Most of my extended family has slowly adopted this, and they just don't look at us as weird. But is there anything in particular? Do you have tubs of beef tallow on your kitchen counter?
I cook with ghee. I haven't gotten into beef tallow yet.
Yeah. It's a little pricier than ghee, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can get.
I mean, I just think it's in general. They were laughing because, again, my son, who's about to turn 4 in the fall, he hasn't had McDonald's yet. People were talking about McDonald's, and he thought they were talking about old McDonald's has a farm, and so they just think it's crazy that just I mean, more so than even any particular ingredients or foods. They think it's kind of crazy that that we avoid certain things. And again, I'm my kids are, they're about to be 2 and 4. They don't know these things. Again, I'm not going to say they can never have these things. Once they get old enough that, but I just don't see the need to introduce all this stuff to my children. At this age when they have no idea about it. So
when you drive by and they see the golden arches, do you tell them that corporate interests have advertised red and yellow to make them feel hunger?
I do not. They just don't even notice it. And I mean,
That's good.
And we do eat some fast food. We eat Chick-fil-A because again, but you can get, grilled nuggets and fruit cups there. So,
That is literally, that's so funny that you say that. I was almost going to comment on it. Now I will. That is literally the only fast food that I eat. And it's not very often. My son actually works at a Chick-fil-A, and
They're so
honestly,
friendly.
They are. It's their pleasure to serve us. Yeah. They, I think honestly, it was like, cause I grew up in, an area where there were a lot of, conservative Christians. That was the church and area that I grew up in. And there were 2 Chick-fil-A's near us. And it was just so cool to have this like fast food restaurant that was owned by Christians. And so, and we just ate there a lot, not primarily because of that. I mean, we did actually enjoy the food. Somehow that is like the last bad habit for me to stop. Yeah. But you can get healthy things at Chick-fil-A. But anyway, okay. I have a few lightning round questions if you're okay with it. Most of this is fun, but it'll be revealing to some extent. All right. When you flip over the package of food when you're shopping, what's the first ingredient you look at on the label?
Oh, like how much carbs is on it, and if there's added sugars and things like that.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, I kind of already blew it on this question. Beef tallow or lard?
So I don't cook with either of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't.
Okay,
I don't
but
know.
if you had to buy a product, like you buy potato chips that are in lard, or
I would probably buy beef tallow.
Yeah,
it just sounds nicer.
They do. Tallow. It's like beef fat or pig fat. Like
yeah, I know.
Tallow sounds so much more elitist.
Exactly, it's like the fancy version of lard.
All right, what's your go-to protein snack?
Raw nuts or like turkey jerky.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Supplements, dangerous trend or
why are
what?
You surprised?
I don't know why. I guess turkey jerky I've just never found appealing. Like, but no, raw nuts. Like I have the little packets of nuts that I can get in large quantities at Costco. Those are my go-to when I'm like biking and I need something. Yeah. Supplements, dangerous trend or a wise strategy?
Oh my gosh, I take so many supplements. So, wise strategy.
We could talk afterward about who has the taller supplement stack. Weightlifting or cardio?
Neither. Weightlifting. I do bar.
You gotta have an answer.
I do bar and Pilates. So, I mean, I guess that's more.
That's strength training more so than cardio. Yeah. Raw or pasteurized milk?
Pasteurized.
All right. Here's a would you rather. Here's a would you rather dilemma: Mountain Dew or Red Bull?
Oh, I guess Red Bull. I don't know.
I probably would do that too, because it's probably more meant to be long lasting or short lasting. McRib or Beyond Meat?
Oh, Beyond Meat.
Cheetos or Little Debbie?
Cheetos. I mean, I still like the taste of a Cheeto. Like I don't really eat them, but like they're still good. Whereas Little Debbie's, I'm just like, why does anyone want those?
Yeah. No. Good point. Grass-fed ribeye or a big scoop of raw milk ice cream? Those are good 2 options.
Can my grass-fed ribeye be well done?
Oh no! What?
Because I would take the meat if I can cook it really well done.
Do you not like you like well done meat?
I do.
Okay, all right. My dad, that was roughly only way he knew how to cook it. I think it was just, I don't know if he knows to order differently, but like when he cooked it at home, like, so I only grew up when we had steaks or whatever, I only had well done meat. And then I learned that there was something called medium rare, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I only cook well done stuff at home.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, Liz. I really appreciate this conversation. Where can people find you? I know they can find you at reason.com. Any socials you want to promote, and anything else that's upcoming for you, articles you're working on that people should know about?
Right now I'm working on something about pronatalism, which will be my next big Reason cover story. But
it'll be a cover?
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, no, sorry. My next big Reason feature. I don't know if it'll be a cover. I don't know if it'll be a cover or not.
That's up to Catherine, I guess.
Yeah, that's always, you can find me on Twitter. But I'm not there very much anymore. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at EN Brown. You can find me on Blue Sky at EN Brown. About it. Just sign up for my Sex and Tech newsletter at Reason, and
All right. Well, thank you, Liz, and
thank you for
appreciate
having me.
You being on.